And an insecurity, basically in its simplest form, is really just a problem. And it's a problem that you have with yourself that makes you unhappy. Okay? To handle that problem, there are four things. It's really simple. Okay? You can deal with it by denial, you can deal with it by self-hatred, you can deal with it by acceptance, and you can deal with it by creating a solution. So I'm going to break down for you exactly how that looks and, of course, what I think are the best methods for dealing with whatever insecurity you have. So first one is denial, which is resistance. It happens when you argue with reality, okay? And it's denying that you have a problem and getting angry at anyone that points out that you have a problem. Or even worse, blaming someone else for something that you did to yourself, okay? For example, if you're overweight and you refuse to admit it and you get angry with other people for trying to point out your problem, or even worse, you blame other people for why you're overweight, whether it's McDonald's or society or whoever, you are in serious denial, and that is a terrible way to handle your insecurities. The next option is self-hatred, another terrible option. Okay, self-hatred or self-pity is a horrible way to respond to a problem, but as opposed to denial and resistance, you at least recognize that there was a problem. So in a way, it's actually better than denial because at least you know that you have a problem, and maybe there's a part of you that wants to change, whereas in denial, it's everyone else's problem but yours, and it doesn't exist. Okay. Self-hatred would be, okay, using the same example of being overweight, is you hate yourself for it, and your self-talk is a constant barrage of I'm fat because I'm weak and lazy, and that makes me garbage, and I'm a piece of shit because I'm fat. And it's just this circular logic of self-hatred, and there's some self-pity in there, and this is a very bad way to deal with any of your insecurities. Okay, the next option is acceptance, which is, now we're getting into better options here. Acceptance is a better response than resistance or self-hatred for sure, especially in terms of problems that are outside of your control, like your height, for example. Okay, when I started high school, I was 5'2" and really small for my age in grade 9, but I wanted to be, by the end of high school, I wanted to be 6'4". Well, I made it to 5'10". I didn't make it 6'4", I made it to 5'10", and by the end of high school, I'd accepted, well, I'm not growing anymore, that's how things are. But I flipped it to that, I just accepted it, and I was happy that I wasn't 5'2", because I stayed from like 5'2" to 5'3", all until the summer of grade 10 and 11, and then I grew like 8 inches in one summer, and thank God I did. But then I just accepted I wasn't growing, and that was it. I'm an average height guy, and that's how it's going to be. But let's say we take that example again of being overweight, and you're overweight, but being overweight is not a big deal to you, okay? Maybe you've got a couple extra pounds, and you accept and love yourself despite carrying a few extra pounds. This is actually a really good way to deal with your insecurities, especially ones that you can't change, okay? If it's your height or something like that, that's a really good way to deal with your insecurities. If it's just a couple pounds overweight, that can also be a good way to deal with your insecurities, because to be honest, 10 pounds overweight, that's not going to cause you any health problems. It's not a big deal. You get to eat a bit more. I mean, you're not watching every calorie, and as long as it's not making you look terrible or affecting your health, this is not a big deal. Okay, and just accepting that, like, I don't really want to change that, it's not a big deal. It's perfectly fine, okay? So acceptance is a really good method for dealing with things you can't control, and it's a good method for dealing with things that are not too much of a big deal, but it has its limitations, okay? Like modern society, and we've got this army of armchair psychologists promotes acceptance of yourself no matter what. Loving who you are, don't shame me for this and that. And this is a good thing, but when you're not getting the results you want, it is not a good thing, okay? Mainstream dating advice will tell you that don't worry about being overweight. If you just accept yourself and love yourself for who you are, then you'll find a girlfriend who loves you for who you are, and people that care about looks are superficial. This is terrible, terrible advice, okay? That's not how it works. The reality is you're going to significantly increase the probability of getting a good girlfriend by being in shape significantly, okay? And your insecurity is telling you this. Your insecurity is telling you, I'm overweight and it's a problem. And that's not a bad thing, okay? It's a good thing to be able to recognize reality and when you have a problem, okay? If you're saying I'm 100 pounds overweight and I want a girlfriend, then accepting being overweight is not the solution, okay? Your insecurity is telling you to go out there and compete, to go out and get the resources you need, like food and money and women, and that is a good thing. Because if you don't have money to pay the rent, you have a real problem. If you have no women in your life, you have a problem. If you're physically unhealthy and unkempt, you have a problem, okay? These are all bad things. These are all problems that need to be solved. And not solved by just saying, this is who I am and I can't change it and I accept and love myself for it. Well, no, you actually can change it, okay? And the truth is, a good part of life is competition. Competition for resources, competition for women, competition for status, for clients. There's not an area of life that is not touched by competition. And when you're not doing well, that voice of insecurity is not your enemy, okay? It's your friend. It's telling you, look, we need to get out there and take what's ours because we have some real problems right here, and these fucking problems need to get dealt with, okay? Forget acceptance when you're getting your ass handed to you in the game of life, okay? You need to compete until that pain point is solved. Compete until you're secure in that area. Like accepting yourself or doing some law of attraction stuff when you don't have money is not the move. You compete until money is comfortable. You're going to feel insecure about money until you have enough money to live comfortably and have a strong safety net. That's a fact of life, okay? So you need to compete until you're secure. And, you know, if you want the good things in life, you have to compete until you're in shape and you're stylish and you're able to have the game to get the girls you want and the money and all those things, okay? If you want those things, and many of those things are not wants, they're needs, right? Food, clothing, shelter, all that stuff are needs. Then you need to solve the actual problem, okay? And the solution method for handling your insecurities is my favorite method, and it is the best method, in my opinion. And what it means is really just solving the problem, okay? And for every problem that's within your control, okay? For something like, again, height or other things like age, well, those are things you just have to accept. But for things within your control, the solution method is almost always the absolute best method. Okay, from money to fitness to women to style to lifestyle, the solution-based approach is the best approach. And it's really what my entire site is devoted to. Like, you have a problem, here's the solution. And the solution is in some form of how-to article or video. All right, it's that simple. And applied across your life, this means maxing yourself out in your wealth, health, relationships, and lifestyle. In fact, maxing yourself out is really the most logical thing you can do when it comes to enjoying your life, because why wouldn't you want to live life the best way that you can? Why wouldn't you want to max yourself in those areas? Like, logically, it just makes sense to apply the solution method, because compared to self-hatred and denial, I mean, it's just a no-brainer, okay? And it really is that simple. So denial and self-hatred you avoid, you accept the things that you can't change, solve the things that you can change, okay? Now, that's easier said than done sometimes, but it really is just a matter of consistency, okay? If you're used to being in a pattern of self-hatred, you might have to reframe those thoughts 100 times or 1,000 times a day. Or, you might have to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week for the next 3 years to get your body solved. But that's what you have to do. And along that path to the solution, before you have the solution, you might not be 100% out of that self-hatred, but you can at least say, well, we're working on the solution. Okay, you're doing that reframe of we're getting the solution together, we're working on it, and you can feel like, okay, maybe I don't have that insecurity handled right now, but it's going to be handled, okay? And your life becomes so much better when you get those things handled. I'm talking about someone who at one point was very skinny, did not have money, did not have, women, and the difference between not having those things and having those things is huge. Okay, your insecurity, that voice in your head stops it stops attacking you. You stop getting that anxiety, you stop getting that self-hatred when you actually have the thing taken care of, when you actually have solved it. Okay, it really, really does make a difference. So those are the 4 methods. The last thing I want to cover is just sort of troubleshooting and how to apply all this stuff to reality. So the first thing about troubleshooting is insecurity as an insult. So again, we go back to modern society and this army of armchair psychologists where everyone and their mother in the comment section on YouTube, in their articles, in day-to-day conversation, in conversation in universities, everyone's an armchair psychologist. Oh, this person's bipolar, this person's NPD, you're projecting. All these different facets of psychology that have waded into our culture and that are being thrown around by people who have no designation in psychology whatsoever, no personal practice in psychology, and they're thrown around like they are a science, when in reality the DSM is constantly morphing and constantly changing what a disorder is and what's not a disorder. Okay, it's not like diabetes where you have diabetes and there's a consistent set of symptoms. You have psychology where it's a constant, the DSM is constantly shifting, and one psychologist will give you a different opinion than the one next door.